They're trying to run shock, what we call shock, what the Saints call shock. It's like inside stick, and number three's got a stick, number two's got an inside fade, and then number one has access stitch on the outside. I just was playing because I love the game, and it's scary to me.
It's really easy for the game to become a job.
Below six in his hands, whistle in his mouth.
Man, kids out there playing the game, staying out of trouble, competing. I love it.
Hard Knocks obviously has again found a way to milk the NFL season. A couple years ago, they introduced Hard Knocks in season, the traditional Hard Knocks, which is always training camp, which like I remember when I was in college, like we would come to practice and like either emulate or definitely discuss. Like I remember the Pac-Man Jones, like Patrick Creighton, like catch the punts. And that next practice, Kendall Wright and Chris Burke are out there trying to like, have that same competition. Joe Bennett's out there trying to see who can catch the most. And so they introduced, I think they've done 2 episodes now of Hard Knocks off season, focusing on the Giants and like the front office and like retooling the roster, draft, yada, yada. And the thing everybody took away from the most recent episode is the Jaden Daniels interview clip. And I know, like, and I knew before we even got on today, like, I knew that even if you hadn't seen it, I knew that you would have at least seen that. Like, if you hadn't seen the whole episode, you would have seen that. So I have my opinions for how that went down, the back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. But 3 things that I took away from it, like his collegiate career, the front office expectations, and then his eventual like draft position that we all know now. Like this, all 3 of those could tell a completely different story. And I'm just curious what your perception, opinion was of that whole scene within that show.
Yeah, those scenes are interesting. I should say those interviews are interesting because, I mean, there is pressure in a game, there's pressure in an interview, but I feel like those pressures are different. So it's always so like, when you have an interview like that with a quarterback, like how is he on the field compared to that? And a lot of kids will struggle in that interview room when because those guys are being grilled. Like you could tell he was nicely grilling Jaden, and so I mean the concept shock, which we run, the Saints run it, basically a stick inside fade by number 2 and access stitch on the outside. He's talking about what are you going to do, and his simple answer was throw a touchdown. Versus what he said with cover 1, that is the correct answer because hopefully you're going the slot fade versus cover 1 and it's a touchdown. But obviously that wasn't what the people in the room were probably wanting to hear. They were probably wanting to hear more of if it's a 1 high look and I'm getting straight cover 1 and I really like the slot fade, but if I have the access on the outside because it's off the corner, then I'm going to take it, which they obviously didn't get. But you could tell that he was feeling the pressure a little bit. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how this clip, fares out within a year based on how he plays.
100, like, and it's so funny because it reminded me of when John Gruden used to do Gruden's QB camp or whatever, QB school, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he'd bring those guys in, and you got guys like Andrew Luck who are like, Spider 2 wide banana, never go broke, taking a profit. Like, we're going to hit the fullback in the flats every time. Like,
yep.
That's answer exactly how John Gruden wants you to. And then you got guys like Cam Newton who were like, we had 1-word play calls.
Right.
And he's like, well, that's not what I'm looking for. And if you just watch those 2 clips, you'd be like, well, then Andrew Luck obviously is going to have like the way better NFL career. And not say Andrew Luck by any means had a bad NFL career, but it would be easy to watch that show and watch those like tape room interview conversations with Gruden and be like, well, Cam Newton can't handle the, high IQ level of the NFL. And it's like, no, Cam Newton did just fine. Won a lot of football games, threw for a lot of yards, took his team to the Super Bowl, won an MVP, all those things. And it's such a double-edged sword because all it takes is a slight misunderstanding of whoever's being asked the question of what the purpose of the question is to get an answer that might derail perception completely. I was I was a victim of this when we were at Tarleton. And, Foul Dog Pop was like, how many plays y'all run at Baylor? And I was like, 40. And he's like, and I'm thinking like he's talking about like per like 7-on-7 period, when it's like 6 or 7 minutes and we're running 40 plays. And that's counting the subs and like going to the twos and the threes are going to mess it up and like et cetera, et cetera. He's talking about in a whole practice. And I'm like, I don't know what I didn't understand that that's what you were asking. So I answered the version of the question that I understood you to ask. And I love the inside, like behind the curtain, like all the access that the show gives. I just hope people, especially coaches, keep in mind that perception, you're not in the room and you weren't in the preparation leading into the room. So I have a buddy of mine that Travis Labhart played at A&M, was with the Texans for a couple of years, and he almost can't go to football games, high school, college, NFL, because he can't stand to listen to people criticize and pick apart anything and everything a coach does because they have no idea what the build up, and he gets even more frustrated with people who are in the profession. So if me and him were ever somewhere and I'm like, why would you do that? And it's like, you have no idea why he did that. You don't know what their third down, their third and short, like go-to defense is. You don't know what the check was. You don't know if they had a kill like your offense does. Like, you don't know any of that. So to assume that just the way it played out post snap to whistle, to assume that that's exactly what was intended, that was exactly what was called, is ignorant because you have no idea what the freedom the quarterback has. You have no idea what the checks are. You have no idea what led up to the decision to put them in that call. So, like I said, love the access, love the inside information. I just hope that football fans take it with a grain of salt, keep it in perspective that like, don't just, throw Jaden Daniels out and he can't handle it now. Here we go. Another, high flying offense, college quarterback that can't handle the scheme of the NFL, because you have no idea if that's I would bet the complete opposite. I think he's going to be just fine.
I agree, and I could be totally wrong here. Didn't the same thing happen on just a little bit of a different level with CJ Stroud? Like I think there was something with like, I don't know if it was his like QBIQ thing that he did, like S2 cognition. I remember there was something, and people were like throwing some shade and like, oh, he ain't ready, and he's pretty good. Like
he was ready.
Yeah, and so that's the biggest thing for me is when you're, and I guess it is this way in high school and in college, but more so in the NFL because your chances to have success are just so marginal. And it's all about like, where are they landing? And are they landing in a spot that understands the kid and going to give the kid, hence kid, there's a difference in him and 45-year-old Tom Brady. And like, are they going to give the kid a chance to develop and meet him in the middle? Because I feel like that's what, one of my my tight ends coach, he actually just started coaching here this past Monday, and he played under Andy Reid, and he was always talking about how good Andy was and is about not always being the coach. It's like, you got to do it this way. This is my system. I recruited you for this system. I'm paying you for this system, and if you can't do them, get somebody else. It's more of the middle approach to where it's like, here's what I want you to do, but let me help you get to that position. What do you think as well? Well, I like that idea. Let's meet in the middle, and let me help develop you to get there. Which I feel like for quarterbacks, obviously, is the most important thing. But you're getting into a day and age where when you guys come out, you got to be ready to play now. And it's sad because it's how many quarterbacks have gone to the league, fell into a place that needed to play now, that if they would have had at least 1 year of being able to play behind a Tom Brady, behind an Aaron Rodgers, that they would have been on the complete other side of it and been successful, as opposed to being thrown in the fire, not ready yet, and all of a sudden now the reputation is they're not good. They can't play. It's that's what I always kind of think about when I'm looking at quarterbacks that don't make it. Like, well, what if he would have went to this team? Would it have worked out? Was it the Indian? Was it the Indian or was it the Arrow? You never know.
Well, and I think that it's it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, the game has never been more popular. It's never been more financially lucrative. That's NFL to college. And really down to high school, which is obviously trickled down into like even Pop Warner and like, there's national champions like 4 or 5 times. There's 10-year-olds playing football year round. It's crazy. But
Unfortunately,
I can't remember his name. There's a guy that was a longtime assistant coach, coached at Bama. He's got a podcast now, and they were talking about like, I'm going to give you a record of a coach, and you tell me if you would fire or renew this guy. And it was like, it'd be like, first 4 years went 3-7, 3-8, 5-6, 5-6. Would you renew this coach? And his coach was like, no. And it's like, okay, well, you just fired Mac Brown at North Carolina. We've become such a win now. Like your GMs get 2, maybe 3 years. Your quarterbacks get 2, maybe 3 years. Like there's no investment process. It seems I don't want to say no. Fewer and fewer teams have the stability to invest into the long term the way I think the game needs it. And it's, there's micro and macro examples of it. Look at the running back situation. Like, you take away the Saquon Barkley contract, running backs are making like $2 million a year,
Right.
And it's because they've become expendable. Like, well, we can go get 3 guys at the cost of Saquon, and we'll get 35 games out of each of them, and then we'll just cycle through 3 more 21, 22, and 23-year-olds. And I'm not saying, nostalgically, like I love seeing the long-term like career guys. I love seeing the Larry Fitzgeralds, the Tyron Smiths, the guys that get the chance to play for a decade, because I think it changes, it doesn't change. It sets the right like mentorship for future players, for future generations, keeps the game like, I don't want to say pure, but for lack of a better term,
right.
on that consistent level. But you can't get that when you look at these guys. When you look at a Jaden, I don't know how many games Jaden Daniels is going to have to start this year, but it could absolutely break him, or it could make him. But what I do know is that historically, you've seen more success from the guys that have been able to sit a year, maybe 2, learn, develop. But then on the flip side of that, you have the Kurt Warner, Eli Manning situation. Eli Manning's rookie year, they put Kurt in like the 6th or 7th game after the Giants are sitting like 2-5 or 2-6, something like that. And he makes the Ravens defense look like, they're not even there, leads the Giants back, they win the game. And then Kurt Warner has the forethought to look and say, the worst thing that they could do is use me as a relief pitcher. Eli either needs to feast or faint. He either needs to be out there the whole time or none at all. Which, he's sacrificing his own playing time. And I think that it's the game has evolved so much, and it's become such a win now culture that we're seeing I think there's a lot more players that are leaving the NFL before they ever really get to find what their ceiling was.
I agree 100%. Let's
get away from the NFL.
Let's go back to high school football where it really matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about most crucial or most meaningful game you've ever coached. When, why, what was the outcome?
Yeah, so for me, I think it would probably be the 2022 Salina team second round. We had just come off of a state semifinal appearance, and we graduated a ton of high quality starters. I think we had, out of that senior class, I think we had 6 that ended up signing. A D1 kid, a JUCO kid, couple D3s, 1 or 2 D2. It was spread across the field, but for Salina, for my tenure there, it was one of the deeper classes. It's becoming more the norm. as those kids really seek to play at the next level. But it was that senior class of 21 of the 21 season was really deep. And so a lot of questions had risen up in 22. Did we have enough depth? Could we fill enough holes? Could we answer enough calls to make another run? And, you know, we win district, we win our first round game, and then we're matched up with Kennedale, who they were in a 3-way tie for first place in their district, and it ended up putting them either second or third, and they were vastly superior to the Wing T. Not only Wing T, they had a kid committed to Oklahoma State. They had a sophomore at the time who's now he's going to be a senior. I think he holds a dozen Power 5 offers. They had a Division II safety. Like they had skill players, even to the extent to where, like, on the first drive, we ran a freeze play and their defense line jumps off sides and we throw the ball in the general direction of that Power 5 corner. And it was close enough on a free play where I was like, we're just going to, his side of the field doesn't exist the rest of the night. And not to mention, in the first round of the playoffs, we lost our 1,000-yard receiver, or, you know, leading receiver, torn ACL. And so we had to, like, it became one of those games to where, and I think you can attest to this, I can't just confidently rely on Johnny's and Joe's lining up and just being better. Like, I'm a guy, selfishly, I love to go fast. You know, I love, obviously, to throw the football around. I love to take deep shots. And, like, the vast majority of those things that I selfishly love had to go out the window because we're playing a team that, like, you know, athlete for athlete is probably at least faster than us. And some of them are bigger. And I got so deep into, I think we ran 3 of our 2-point plays, and 2 of them were on 4th and shorts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And one of them hit for a touchdown. One of them, the poor kid, love the kid to death. He's playing junior college baseball now. He dropped just a butt naked touchdown. But we got deep into the bag. We spent the entire second quarter in 13 personnel.
Good for you.
And then we spent the majority of the second half in 10 personnel. You know, and it was one of those games where, and before that, you know, a couple years ago, we've had a similar conversation, but it was one of those games where, like, I couldn't just look out there and be like, just run past him, because that wasn't going to happen. Like, we had to slow down, and there had to be a ton of communication on the sideline, in the press box, what's there, what's not there. And seeing those kids that we didn't have a ton of, like, super high level skill talent. We were big up front. We had experience in the backfield, and seeing those kids just fight tooth and nail. And I felt like it really became a chess match between me and their defense coordinator. And obviously I felt great because we won. But it was one of those because Richard Barrett he's a state champion head coach. He's a longtime head coach in Texas, absolute stud, known him for decades. And it was reaffirming in the sense that, like, this wasn't one of those normal games where it's like, okay, we can just line up and, you know, lean on them and do whatever we want. Like, they're going to hit us in the mouth a couple. Their defensive end had a kickoff return for a touchdown, a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He caught a couple first downs. He had like 3 sacks. What? Why is number 99 returning kicks? Well, it worked because he ran it back for a touchdown, and that's why he's at Oklahoma State now. But to be in a situation like that and to go down early, and for it to be a back and forth game, and for us to be able to slow down, do a bunch of call at the line, check with me stuff, and the kids never waver emotionally. Like I said, I felt like it turned into a chess match in the second half, and we were able to come out on top. The stats weren't pretty, but the scoreboard was.
Well, when you're playing Wing T, stats aren't going to be pretty. You know, so who'd you end up playing after that?
We had a rematch against Anna, and in 2022, we played Anna twice and lost by a combined 6 points. Yeah. We were down 10. No, we were down 11 with like 3 minutes left. And we went, they did a lot of like maybe match quarter. I don't know. It essentially ended up being like cover 0. And we went double smash slot post. And when the kid broke to the post, the safety guessed corner. So he's butt naked. We score, ran a 2-point play, the little orbit double pass, cut it to 3. Defense gets a stop. We get a couple first downs, and then we just couldn't. Time ran out.
Shout out Coach Parr. He turned that place around.
I mean, 3 years, you go from 7-3, not making playoffs, to state champion. It's crazy impressive.
And shout out Anna. I lived there for a year, so good
Shout out
place.
to the
Good
Yogi.
place to be.
All right, your turn.
I would say, as a whole, most important game, biggest game was the Hutto Richmond Foster game, just because of going into trying to go to state championship. That one, the game that sticks out the most, though, for me, and I feel like this is probably pretty common with most coaches, is when you have the teams that aren't really expected to do much. Generally, what happens is those teams end up pulling together more than what you anticipate, because they realize deep down they don't have those dudes they used to, and the power of the team actually comes out. And so when I was at Taylor, my second year, we lost a really, really good quarterback, and a few really important seniors when they ended up playing in the NFL. And so weren't expected to do much, had a brand new quarterback, and long story short, we ended up playing Canyon Lake for the district championship. Hadn't won one in 22 years. It was either third or fourth and long. I can't really remember. Like 11 plus. So obviously bad play calling for me, I guess, first or second down. and so shock. And so we ended up calling a hinge to one of the receivers that they weren't anticipating us to go to. I guess they were anticipating us to go to the 6'5" receiver, which probably could have done that too. And we ended up throwing it to the 5'11" receiver that caught it like right at 12 yards, and for the first down. And I remember we ended up going to score. We won the game, and it was one of those like Gatorade bottles were being thrown around over the game. Water spraying everywhere, and everybody's excited. It was the first time in 22 years. And when you're talking about a town like Taylor, it just means more because it's similar to Salina, obviously, but they had not experienced the continual success that Salina had. But in regards of more of an established town, like they had been yearning for that, and so that was a pretty special game.
Absolutely. And I think that was that your boy Brock?
It was.
Yeah.
Good call.
Big boy that went to Tulsa. What was his name?
Malik Jackson.
Yeah, Malik, certified freak. Like, leave it to Trenton. But Trenton gets out of the panhandle and just like he lucks himself into just like a receiver core that I mean, pulls a kid out of the gym that has no idea how to really play receiver. Yep. Texts me and he's like, "How do I teach him to catch a slant?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, he keeps body catching." I was like, "Yeah, but can anybody tackle him? Who cares?" Say that for the off season. It's October. Just throw it to him.
I do remember calling you to come out there and like, hey, do whatever you need to do. Just go coach him.
No, shout out to Taylor Ducks for sure.
Yep, once a duck, always a duck.
All right. So again, pivoting, still staying on the high school level. We've talked about you've been a couple different places, experienced a few different off seasons and in seasons and different springs, and from the 4A level to the 6A level to the private school world. What is one of the biggest things that y'all are doing different or unique from other places that you've been that you would say is the most beneficial?
I mean, like, culturally, I'll answer that I'll give you two answers. Culturally, one thing that we do here that I really like, we call it kitchen table conversations. And essentially, post-practice, because mind you, we have practice right now. Post-practice, our kids go up to our team meeting room area. Phones are left in the locker. They can't have any phones. So that in itself is very unique. But can't have any phones, so they're up there, and our nutritionists and other, parents have food every single day for them, for us and the coaches to sit at a table. Has to be a different table every day, a different group. We sit down and we eat our, whether it's the Cram PB&Js, which, by the way, if you haven't had the Cram PB&J, shout out Cram. Super healthy, really good, way healthier than the Uncrustables. Anyway.
No free
so
shout outs.
Yeah. So each of PB&J, and then just simply converse with maybe people you've never conversed with before. And it's really cool too for the coaches as well, because we're able to communicate offensive coach, defensive players, or even, offensive coordinator to freshman or eighth grader that I would, hardly even know. And so that's pretty cool. So that's culturally. I would say from a program perspective, just the fact that we're like practicing every day is the biggest difference, because again, like we talked about it before, in Texas you can't do anything because you either choose to do 2 days, and then if you choose to do 2 days, then no spring ball, or not 2 days, I should say 2 weeks of practice, and then so you didn't get to do spring ball. And this is more in regard to 5A and 6A. Or you choose to do spring ball and you only have 1 week to prep. But regardless, like if you're in Texas, you're not really able to do much from a team perspective until just a few weeks before your first scrimmage. Whereas here, I've been scripting a full-out practice, team, one-on-ones, 7-on-7, install, since, very beginning of June. We had a 2-week break there, obviously the end of June and the beginning of July. But it's a full practice, Monday through Thursday. They lift on Friday. They lift every day, but on Friday, all they do is lift. So, like, the amount of football they're getting, it's more than most places. And so you got to be aware to make sure that you don't get burned out. But the amount of detail they're able to get and that you're able to get them is on like a whole different level. Let me put it this way, not to dive too deep to this stuff, but like, and we talked about it, but like we the other day had just a simple 15-minute check, kill, period, to where we were able just to talk through why we would kill a play, why we're checking a play and not killing a play, why we would kill and not check because they checked the check or whatever. And then like yesterday, we had a shift in motion. Here's all of our shifts versus our motions, and here's why. You really just don't get to do that a ton in Texas and not feel rushed, because in Texas, hey, we got a week until our first scrimmage. We just need to make sure they know how to do smash, or whatever it may be. And so that's where, for me, it's like being able to provide more content for them, provide more instruction. Luckily we get coaches. We have that, but it's so different for me to do that. So our install is a lot more lengthened, if you will, than when I was in Texas, where it was like a 3-day install.
Yeah, and that's which, side note, saw old Joe Daniels football was like, nobody's installing anything in 3 days, and it's like, right.
Mike Leach would beg to differ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, and the UIL, the addition of I think it was really during COVID, like the skills and drills thing that you can do, which when Coach Kaz and Dykes were at SMU, like they did skills and drill stuff, but it was a lot of like player led, like here's a laminated note card, go out there, and like the senior of the position group puts them through like different stuff.
Yeah.
Which has its benefits. I think that catching a football, holding the football, snapping a football, I think all of those, the consistency in which you do those will be reflected in the season. But yeah, to full on practice, like it's different, especially at the level I'm at now, the 2A schools, because my starting quarterback's played probably 120 baseball games this summer. So it's like, he's going to be on the road. He's going to be doing things. And even if he is there, there's going to be situations where he's like, hey, I don't really need to throw today because, we played 4 games on Sunday and it's, 24 hours later, which I totally understand. And like we talked about, those kids need to do everything. And I don't ever want it to feel like football summer conditioning is like, no, that truncates. Like you have to take it back. Your other stuff has to take a back seat to my stuff. And it's like, we just need to find a balance, etc. But I mean, I can't fathom a world where I'm coaching at a high school that practices more than the NFL and more than college. Which is, I mean, it's a simple reality of the legal practice structure in which y'all have.
Yeah.
And so that's just crazy to me.
Yeah. And check that. Very illegal. Okay, what we're doing is not
100%.
illegal.
Yeah,
it's not
for the administrative board of Tennessee Private School. They are
we're
following
gonna
the
ban.
rules.
All right, so we have a compliance officer for crying out loud. So, who has that at the high school level? So yeah, we're following by rule probably more than the board itself. So, there's that. So what about like for you guys with Salina? Obviously, lack of resources going from there to where you're at now because it's obviously a smaller school, and so your kids are required to do a lot more. So how does your off season or even summer differ from Salina?
So I remember like for almost every off season, I had some varying conversation of like, what is the off season? What is the track? What does the conditioning camp structure need to look like? Because Salina is Salina, and it's, I mean, until, love the man, but until Bill Elliott rides off into the sunset and somebody out that's not part of his tree takes over that program, that track program probably ain't gonna change. That off-season program probably ain't gonna change. That summer conditioning program probably ain't gonna change. And why should it? I mean, 8 state championships, 28 overall state championships in all sports. Like, obviously it works. But there was always somebody having a conversation about like, well, we need to focus on sprinting. We need to focus on more Olympic lifting. We need to train our athletes at a higher level. And I think there's some truth to that. I think Matt and Allie at Melissa, they've done a great job of adapting to their type of demographic, their type of athlete. Coach Kadudi down at Fulshire, similar.
Shout out Coach Kadudi, wide zone.
Yeah, Mr. Wide Zone. I've seen some of the things that they're doing this summer, and they're doing a lot of like brick instruction, like layer by layer instruction, or I guess block training. And I think that there's levels in the sense that like that's totally understandable and totally doable for high level programs with high level athletes. And then I think that like the thing that's helping me is that the foundational structure and expectation and like routine that was Salina was based off of taking 5'8", 160-pound kids, turning them into 5'9", 180-pound kids who were tough as nails and strong as they possibly could be. And that's where we are. So we don't need to be super complex in like the specificity in which the lifts that we do. We're going to do our alphas. We're going to bench. We're going to squat. We're going to incline. We're going to front squat. We're going to do Olympics. We're going to hang clean. We're going to power clean. We're going to do those things. But we're going to train the body on a broader sense. We're going to have our speed days when we do stations. We're going to have our power days when we do stations. It's very, I don't want to call it old school, but it's traditional in the sense that to me, that's like a phase one off-season program. And until you start consistently producing kids who are outperforming the program, that's what you need to be. And that could take 2 years. That could take 10 years. You have no idea. If our junior high kids start showing massive gains that lead to a hard plateau in the weight room, we adjust. If our kids start showing that their test times are plateauing, or they're, as far as like 40, 5, 10, 5, things of that nature, their 300 times start plateauing, then we need to tweak and become more specific in our agility training, our station training as well. But for right now, I need everybody in the program to get generally stronger and generally faster and generally in better shape. Now, obviously, your expectations for your offensive and defensive line in shape are totally different than your skill players, obviously. But you can ask anybody that plays offensive line for us in the offseason, they run 300s. because, and I've got a left tackle that's pushing 300 pounds. But guess what? He's never had to run before, and he wants to go play college football. So he's got to find a way to stay big and lose some baby fat. And 300s will get that done. So I think that that's the biggest thing. You know, there's levels, right? And if I'm at Duncanville, if I'm at Southlake, if I'm at Highland Park, I have sport specific, I have position specific, I have, you know, like when I was at Baylor, we had different color groups, and like all freshmen started, might be I'm gonna butcher these, so nobody yell at me. Might be the green group, and or like the black group, and then like you've got to graduate, because every final set of every lift had to be signed off by a coach. If it was your third, we were doing 3 sets of squat, your third set had to be signed off by a coach. And when that coach that's signing you off agrees that you're now putting up numbers and you're handling the weight that's on your card easily, well, then you get to graduate to the green group. And then those guys get to graduate to the gold group. And then those guys get to graduate to the white group. Lanier Sampson, I don't think he did a single squat rep his last 2 years at Baylor. I mean, he was 5'9.5", you know, flirting with 200 pounds, playing receiver, running a 4.3. Like, son, you don't need a squat. Right? Like, we're going to do some different lower body. Antoine Goodley was the same way. Every time Antoine Goodley put the barbell on his back, it seemed like he gained 2 pounds. And it's like, son, we don't really need you to do that. Like, you're squatting almost 600 pounds. That's good. And so you graduate into those groups, and obviously more coaches, more resources, more groups. And so our grouping, in my mind, is program wide. When we get to a point where I feel like I have a sufficient number of players within the athletic program that can graduate to a more highly skilled technical form of weight training, then we'll split and we'll have a blue group and a white group. But for right now, we just got to keep building. We got to keep getting generally stronger, generally faster, and generally in better shape.
Makes sense, because obviously, I mean, when you're at a new place like that, you're just trying to set the foundation in a place to where everybody can just do a plank. You know, you're trying to set, like, let's just make sure that we're functionally able to withstand our body weight. And so that makes sense. And then you'll obviously graduate to, like you said, to the point where everybody now is able to get to another level. And if you do it the right way, you probably end up having 2 or 3 different levels, because the experienced guys have gone through the program now, and now they're at a different level than the rising 8th grader or whatever it may be. So I believe in you. You'll do it the right way.
I do have one. I saw this on Twitter, and coach's Twitter, everybody's got a PhD in off season. I saw a guy basically like throwing massive shade at either Western Michigan or Western Kentucky, because they were like skill training their guys. They had them in the weight room. Everybody's up on like a 20-inch box, and they're just jumping off and landing soft, right? Like landing like an athlete. And that's all they're doing. There's no weight. There's no like explosive movement after. It's just step off, land. And this is at a Division I school, and the guy was like, isn't this a complete waste of time? Like, yada, yada, yada. I have my opinions on that approach and that guy saying that, but I want to hear yours first.
I mean, I don't think that it is in anybody's best interest to ever judge based off of video on the internet, because they have no idea what the programming of that coach is, regardless of the simplicity of the activity. To me, it just makes zero sense to sound like and try to feel as if that you know more than that person that is doing the program. And maybe you do, but I mean, we don't know. Maybe it was an off day for them, and they wanted to practice on how to basically fall off a box and load and get into their posterior chain and get into their glutes and get to their hips. Nobody knows. I always find the non-coach Twitter people that try to coach other coaches pretty funny.
Yeah, my takeaway is like, and I've been guilty of it, but like, dude, shut up. You're an idiot. And I'm going to tell you why you're an idiot. I watched Bryce Petty for like 4 months when he got on campus, was not allowed to squat more than like 135 pounds. And he was pissed. So mad. But the whole purpose of it is like, I'm going to ensure with complete confidence that you master the technique of squat. Because if I invest these 4 months into this, then I don't have to worry about anything the next 4 years. I don't have to worry about you dropping a bar mid-set, which is a whole nother can of worms. I don't have to worry about your knees collapsing and you hurting something. I don't have to worry about you being stiff in your hips to where you're up on your toes. I don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I don't care what other people's perception is. I've got to make sure that you check all of these physical movement boxes before I let you load the bar like it's Muscle Beach. And it blows my mind that has to be explained. You know, what's understood should not have to be explained. And if you don't understand, don't assume anything and ask. They put those videos out there to give you a small glimpse behind the curtain, like we talked about with HBO. But they're not giving you everything on purpose. So don't pretend like you can make any type of educated judgment, opinion, or criticism without having any. What did that kid? Is that the beginning of the workout? Maybe that's part of their warm up. Maybe it's part of their cool down. Maybe it is a recovery day. Just shut up and take the coaching points and move on.
Yeah, and let's just keep it really, really matter of fact. What is bad about any level, college, NFL, middle school, doing fundamental principles in the weight room? I don't see anything bad with it. Like, whether they're too advanced to do it or not, like, you're never too advanced to always go back to the fundamentals. So what you said earlier, educated criticism is very, very, very key in today's world. And you see a lack of that on Twitter and Instagram and any social media. So pretty common.